In a democracy, citizens need to be informed. Informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Welcome to our program. Today's guest is Attorney Everett Glenn, the founder of the Education Leadership Institute, a nonprofit agency that assists Southern California inner-city high school and college athletes to matriculate in and through higher education. Among the many activities the organization sponsors are seminars, workshops, and field trips designed to broaden the horizon of these talented young men and boys. Today, Everett and I will be discussing ESP's mission and his own views of the current state of the African American student athlete. Everett, thanks for being on our program.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
The history of the African American athlete is a very intriguing study. You have dedicated yourself into this organization that you have to help the young student athlete to take advantage of the opportunities that historically African American athletes didn't have. What has motivated you to do what you do?
Well, my own personal experience, and in terms of having played sports from the time I was young, and not ever having a desire or any kind of belief that I was going pro in sports, but rather that I could use the lessons that you learn through sports. Hard work pays off, teamwork, focus. You know, if you lose today, you could win tomorrow. Never giving up, that sort of thing. I was able to use those things in the classroom and in life, and a thought occurred to me when I consider the failure rate of these guys who are playing sports today, both in terms of not being high school ready. Okay, and so if you're not high school ready, it's going to be hard to be college ready. And if you're not college ready, it's going to be hard to graduate from college.
That's right.
And so the thought occurred that, again, just like in my life, where people intervened when I was in 6th grade, and I was in programs from 6th grade to 12th grade. So by the time I got to college, I was confident in myself beyond what I could do on the basketball court. And so if we could duplicate that, then we could achieve, hopefully, the same kind of success.
And that's what you're trying to do with your institute.
That's right.
Guys who are probably not either play college basketball or even professional basketball, which is a pipe dream. You're trying to develop their other options career-wise.
That's right. Using sports to show them how not to focus just on sports.
Is that hard?
Not really. The hardest part is just getting them in the room. Mm-hmm. But once you get them in the room and you show them the opportunities, again, like in my case, I didn't go pro in sports, but I went pro through law in sports so that I could represent Jerry Rice or Richard Dent or Reggie White or Clark Kellogg or Willie Gault, Gil Byrd, those kind of guys. So they can see that you can still participate in the game and enjoy some of the excitement of it. But I've been practicing law for 42 years, so if I had tried to play, my career would have been long, long over.
Now, you take these young boys, primarily African-American boys from the inner city.
That's right.
What kind of challenges away from sports do the African-American student-athlete face just trying to be successful in the classroom?
Well, the biggest obstacle in my mind is just the lack of how should I say it, the confidence that the district or the teachers or the expectation, I think, is what I'm looking for.
The low expectation.
That's right, yeah. What we preach is just greatness. In fact, one of the questions we ask them is, what's the biggest obstacle to becoming great? And it's good, okay, being good is the biggest obstacle to becoming great. And so they get satisfied, and there's no expectation. I mean, I've had 4 boys go through the district myself.
Sons of yours?
Sons of mine, yeah. And so I think if you don't have 2 parents in the house, if you definitely don't have a man in the house who can go up to the school, go up to the school for open house and all the PTA and that kind of stuff, and they can know, then I think because of the number of kids they got to deal with, sometimes the teachers, they look at their job as identifying the kids who want to learn and the kids who don't want to learn. And then we're going to separate them, and we're going to teach the ones who want to learn, and we're just going to maintain the ones who don't want to learn.
Now, you bring up a good point. As I saw on your website, and I was struck by the photo of your website of a family. Now, you talk about the absence of the African-American man in the family. You're stressing matrimony for these young men to start families and be responsible husbands first and then fathers.
Absolutely. Well, become men first.
Yes, okay.
Okay, because if they don't become men, the rest of the stuff is out.
That's right.
But again, it's all taken, we use the same strategies that we used when I represented these pro athletes. So that Clark Kellogg, for example, he's married to the same woman that he met and married when he was coming out of college. Same with Gil Bird and Anthony Hancock and these guys. They were #1 draft picks, big-time athletes. But we know that everything begins and ends at home.
That's right.
And part of the reason these guys, there's a statistic they throw out that 80% of them wind up bankrupt and unemployed after they play. The biggest factor in that is that they get divorced, that they marry the wrong person for the wrong reasons, and then when the career's over, the wife leaves and takes half of whatever's left, and so it's going to be hard to make that last for many years.
Well, let's hop over to the graduation rate of the African-American male athlete. Now, I've gotten mixed signals in terms of data.
Yeah.
Recent USC data says that they're struggling in terms of graduation rate. And then there's another NC2A, I guess, or federal data that says there's progress being made. From your perspective, the graduation rate of the university graduation rate of the African-American male, where are we right now? Are we doing okay or not?
No. I mean, it would be criminal, I think, if it affected white student athletes the way it affects black student athletes, and they would have a congressional inquiry, I think, into what's happening. But again, it starts at a young age, so that if you're not high school ready in the 9th grade and not college ready in 12th grade, it's hard to be able to do college level work. And so part of the problem is these colleges and universities, they're bringing kids on campus who are not ready to do the work, and rather than meet them where they are, they throw them into this college environment, expecting them to do college level work, knowing that they're not prepared to do it. So, and they don't have remedial programs or anything like that to really help them get up to speed.
So you're saying, as Dr. Harry Edwards was saying, that you feel like the African-American athlete is being exploited.
Oh, all along the way. I mean, and it's actually going lower now, because there used to be a time high school sports wasn't on television. Now you get games of the week and teams playing all over the country, and it's being televised on ESPN, that sort of thing. So there's this pressure at every level now to win.
Well, how can you say that the African-American athlete is being exploited every when they're making millions of dollars and they're getting a college education? I mean, that's the people that are disagreeing with you on your point, saying that these are millionaires and they're getting a free education.
Well, most of them don't get an education, #1. And even the ones who graduate, you'd have to, it's been my experience in dealing with them one-on-one, and when I represented them and dealt with them like that, most of them don't come out with the same kind of knowledge and experience that a non-athlete would have in terms of the college experience. They can't do internships, they can't work, they can't major in whatever they want to major in. If you look around the country, we know that there's certain schools that have certain majors. Even here in Southern California, if you go to UCLA, you're going to major mostly in government. Just look down the roster. Long Beach State, if you look and see what these kids are majoring in. So they don't get the benefit of the bargain. If they got the benefit of the bargain, then maybe that would have some weight. And number 2, there's only a few of them that become millionaires. I mean, only 6% of them get a Division I scholarship, okay, and then less than 1% of them ever going to get paid to play. So there's a small handful of them, but when you look at the volume of them that help these colleges and universities make money, for example, I mean, they've got 6 major conferences that probably combine about 60 schools, and these schools make hundreds of millions of dollars. And again, only a handful of these guys are going to go pro, but the college sports industry is actually bigger than the pro, because there's only 32 NFL teams, okay? Again, we get 60 top college football teams in basketball and football. So when you look at it economically, for sure, there's a few guys who are getting paid, but that's the only money that we make in the game is what they pay the players. But when it comes to spending that money, I mean, again, owners, if they couldn't pay the money if they weren't making it. So whatever the players are getting paid, owners are making much more.
Well, let's get to the subject then of the student athlete at the university level getting a stipend. Some people are advocating that these athletes should get a stipend at least while they're at the university to pay for certain expenses.
Yeah, but I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I don't think they should get paid. I mean, I don't think you turn it into a job.
Okay.
Unless you just change the whole dynamic of college sports. I mean, because if they're amateurs, then they don't go to school. So what you do is they should have programming, and they should pay for this programming with the money on every campus around here. They get revenue-generating sports, football and basketball, and then those two sports support the entire athletic department. So the non-revenue generating sports of tennis and golf and synchronized swimming and water polo and that sort of thing, probably about 30 or 40 black boys on every one of these campuses are generating the revenue to support all these programs, coaching staff, scholarships, and everything. So to me, it would seem like they would take some of that money and spend it on these boys who are actually helping to generate it to make sure that they have the best chance to be successful in life beyond sports.
Is any university even inching toward that equity or taking care of not exploitation the athlete that you?
Well, I mean, they all would say that they do. I mean, the NCAA has a program called CHAMPS, which is a life skills program that's on every campus. The problem is with the demands time-wise on these guys who play the revenue-generating sports of basketball and football. They, for the most part, don't even have time to take advantage of the programs that were started to try to help the student athlete. They're helping the student athlete, but they're helping the student athlete who's playing golf, who's playing tennis, who's playing baseball, synchronized swimming, water polo. So in terms of equity, those sports are predominantly white sports, okay, and the athletes are predominantly white. So you have football and basketball players that are predominantly black generating revenue, support the entire athletic department, and then they're using those proceeds to support those non-revenue generating sports. All the while, the kids who are generating the money are failing academically, they're failing socially. There's all kinds of help that they need, and everybody knows they need it. And I would think that rather than pay the athletes, is that they develop some real programming so they meet these guys where they are. You want to bring a guy in who's got an 8th grade reading level because he, can rebound or block shots.
Well, why should that student athlete who's reading at an 8th grade level, who is not succeeding in high school, be allowed to be on a college campus?
Well, he shouldn't, but I mean, that's the reality of it. If you can play, I've represented guys, for example, high school guys who wanted to transfer from one university to another after they accepted a scholarship offer. And that's where it became clear to me. There was a local kid, a Long Beach Poly kid, whose name I won't mention, but he accepted a scholarship to a Pac-12 school, and then he didn't qualify. Ultimately didn't qualify. But they had him participate in the week-long practice that they have before school starts in September. And under NCAA rules, him participating in that practice now makes him a transfer student, even though he never enrolled in that university. And the problem was that they knew that he hadn't been cleared, right? And so if he's not cleared, technically he shouldn't even been allowed to participate in those practices.
But he was allowed to.
He was allowed to make him a transfer student. So he came to me and asked me if I could help him, because now another Pac-10 school wants to offer him a scholarship because he went to a junior college, took the class he needed to take in order to become eligible. And the rule was that if he had been admitted as a regular full-time student. And so I asked the NCAA, what do you mean a regular full-time student? Because I looked at his admissions letter from this major institution, and in his admissions letter, I got 4 boys that I put through college, and I've never seen a letter. My sons didn't get a letter like this to say that we're going to give you all this kind of help, and you're going to be in the same class as other people, but you're going to be going at a different level and a different speed. So I argued successfully that he wasn't admitted as a regular full-time student. And so he shouldn't be prohibited from transferring in terms of interconference transfers. They come to death penalty. You lose the year, you can't get athletically related financial aid. And we were able to get that reversed even without a hearing when I just raised these questions with the NCAA.
When we come back after this break, I want to talk about what your organization is trying to do about that, and also get into some other topics about the NFL protest,
Yes.
Colin Kaepernick, and some things in the future that there was a commission that was convened by Condoleezza Rice to look into the scandal that happened on the NCAA. I would like to get your views on that.
Yeah.
But we're going to take a break. Right after these messages, we'll talk about with Attorney Everett Glenn about some issues related to the African American student athlete. We'll be right back after these messages. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Welcome back to Conversations with Erroll Parker. We're visiting with Attorney Everett Glenn, who is the head of the Education Institute for African American, well, not just African American, but inner city athletes. And we're discussing the African American athlete, Attorney Glenn, and you're representing them and the organizations you've started. Tell us about the BOSS program that you have. What are you trying to do with these student athletes?
Well, we're trying to show them how to turn their 15 minutes of fame into a lifetime of good fortune and impact, how to use sports to achieve success beyond sports, in life, at home, in school, and in business. I mean, in a nutshell. And then we want to have them use their definite and provable influence with their non-athlete peers so that we get those boys who don't play sports to also get infected with this disease called the desire to want to become great. You know.
I was impressed with your own personal story. I mean, most of these boys will not be great athletes, but you found a niche in the athletic industry, whether it's a physical therapist, whether it's a coach, whether it's an agent, that they can stay close to the game and
Exactly.
make a good life for themselves.
Not only stay close to the game, but again, they can. If you examine sports, I mean, like our academic component of the program is STEM-based. And so just imagine all the technology in sports. I mean, even we have a Math Madness competition, which is a takeoff of March Madness. So it's a single elimination math tournament where they have to solve increasingly more difficult math problems. So we're just using what they are passionate about,
Yes.
sports, to show them how to become equally passionate, because it takes the same kind of passion to be successful away from sports, showing them how to use that stuff in a way that heretofore, I mean, most successful people, I would think, look back to their participation in sports as the foundation for their success. You know, camaraderie and, you know, friends made and character developed. And
Teamwork.
Yes.
That kind of stuff.
But for our guys, it's like, you know, NBA or NFL or go home. And, you know, we got to change that dynamic, especially when you consider that in Long Beach, for example, 75% of these boys, when they graduate high school, they don't even qualify to go to college.
That's right. Now, you bring positive role models in front of these guys. Some of the guys that you have come in front were not that successful, but they have a story to tell.
Absolutely.
To tell the kids what not to do. And then, of course, you have some very high-powered, high-profile, not just African-American men, but men of all walks of life, to tell them about the success that they can experience through sports.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, again, everything is really based upon our own personal experience, because most of the folk who are part of the BOSS team, we have each successfully navigated the high school to college to professional ranks, achieving athletic and academic success. So we don't tell them what to do. There's a theory that if you tell them, they're going to forget, right? And if you teach them, they might remember. But if you involve them, that's when they learn. So everything we do is like a conversation. We ask them a lot of questions, and they're really smarter than we give them credit for. But again, if you ask an early question about the problem in the school district, is they don't have the same kind of confidence in the kids. We know that all of them are capable. They're all God's children, so they all got greatness inside of them, and we're in love with their potential. They just have to have somebody help them understand that they got this potential. And what makes the program unique is that it's year-round and it's multi-year, so that multiplier effect means over time, because that's what it takes to change this, is over time. And we call them drive-bys. So there's a lot of events that, that they get exposed to, like, one day, couple of hours, like you said, to have somebody come in and talk to them, tell them don't do drugs and do this, and they never see that person again. In our program, these guys have Glenn Milborn, who, is a product of South Central Los Angeles, then went to Stanford and played a number of years in the NFL, and now he's got his own lobbying firm. Glenn has been with these guys every summer, so they see Glenn every summer.
Okay.
Clark Kellogg. I mean, they see these guys on a regular basis, and then during the school year, so it's not this, I'm here today and I'm telling you all this stuff, and I never see you again.
But the guys that you got involved with are involved with them.
That's right.
On at least a monthly basis and keeping them accountable. Let's zoom ahead to some real controversial subjects as it relates to the African-American athlete. We see Colin Kaepernick, who has started a real movement in terms of protesting, taking the knee, but now the NFL have taken their stance. They've pushed back, and they're saying that if these athletes come on the field and do any type of demonstration, whether it's kneeling or whatever, the team will be fined as well as they will be fined. What do you think about that rule?
Well, I think they're trying to solve a problem. Maybe they're putting I don't know which way it goes, put a Band-Aid on something, or it's not going to solve the problem. Okay, because the problem, and then the players, I don't even think, kneeling, fine, if you want to express yourself, that's fine. But on the player side, I think they would be better off doing something constructive in the communities that they want other people to save. So, I mean, that's part of our problem. We want other people to come save our community. Yet you have these guys who are in financial position, and they've got relationships. They could bring help. Magic Johnson, what did he do? He brought a lot of help. He brought businesses to the inner city. So he didn't take a knee, but he created some economic momentum that could solve a lot more problems, right?
Well, we're talking about apples and oranges here. When you're talking about something else a person who is successful can do to help a program like yours. But there are, if you look at what Kaepernick is saying, he is protesting against police brutality in the black community. So is that legitimate for him to do that, and the reaction that he's gotten from that?
Oh, I mean, it's legitimate for him to protest it because it's real, but again, I don't think the problem in our community is the police. Okay, the problem in our community is we got kids who don't know how to read, don't know how to write, don't know how to think. And therefore, when they get in these situations with the police, not to give the police a pass, but I'm 65 years old, and I have been stopped by the police, but I've never had an issue with the police. Even if they're wrong, I know how to handle myself. I'm not going to be challenging what they could do. And again, not to give them a pass, but the police are not the problem. And our focusing on the police, I think, is missing the problem. We're our own worst enemy. And so again, you get Kaepernick, if you want to make a point, then look at what the NFL is doing beyond what they're paying these guys. I mean, NFL, unlike every other industry in this country, they don't have a supplier diversity program. So there's no way for people who don't play sports to participate in that multi-billion-dollar industry. They're building stadiums all over the place. They're building one in Inglewood right now. Check and see how many minority contractors actually get business on that project in a city that's 99% minority.
So you're saying then the issue of police brutality should be pushed back on the back burner, and more opportunities these athletes who are protesting should be doing more in their own communities?
Not only that, but economics is the new civil rights. That's what I've heard Jesse and Ralph, and I mean Al, Reverend Al, all these guys. Economics is the new civil rights. Okay, so we're going back and talking about civil rights stuff in terms of the police, but what about all this money that's being made that we're not participating in, that we need to just take a stand? I mean, Nike, for example. I mean, just take it out of the league context. The gentleman that owns Nike is a multi-billionaire. Okay, and he pays LeBron James you know, what, 20 million or whatever he pays him, and that looks like a nice payday, but not when you compare to the $2 billion he's making off selling these shoes. My thinking is, why don't LeBron and Kobe start their own shoe company and make them the same place in China, or even start a factory here in the inner city and get some of these government. So again, I think our focus, just like on paying the players in the college level, we respond to what other people make issues as opposed to ourselves determining what the issues should be. For sure, there's an issue with brutality with police. I mean, there's definitely an issue there.
Okay.
But does that issue outweigh, we're at the bottom of everything. And so I'm saying the police, they can be dealt with if we had a better equipped black boy or black man, if he's more articulate, if he was a better critical thinker.
So you think if I'm understanding what you're saying, if the African-American student athlete was more educated, was more successful in the classroom, then that would mitigate some of the clashes that they would have with police?
That's right, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily stop, I mean, because, I mean, again, I've been stopped a number of times, but I've never had an issue. They stop me, they give me a ticket, they go about their business, I go about my business. And if I have a problem with them stopping me, when I go to court, that's when I deal with that problem.
Okay, so we have situations now here where we see the African-American athlete who is at the bottom of, well, this African-American people in general, when you look at statistics,
yeah,
whether it's health, whether it's economics, whether it's all these type of things, at the bottom of the scale. And what you feel like your organization should do is working with these young athletes.
That's right.
Maximize their horizon in terms of the career opportunities they have, so they have a chance at a better life. Now, looking at it statistically, Attorney Glenn, what type of impact, you say, let's say in the Long Beach area where your organization primarily is, even though it's Southern California,
yeah,
from a statistical standpoint, where would you like to see the numbers go in terms of high school graduation and university graduation?
Well, I think it should, there really shouldn't be a disparity between the numbers. I mean, for sure, 75% of these boys should not be graduating high school, not eligible to even apply to college. And already in just the 2 years that we've been operating this program in Long Beach, we now, through the data the school district has provided, all of our boys are outperforming their non-boss peers in every category that the district is tracking. So we're on the way to changing that number so that more of them will be competent in the core content areas. More of them will take algebra in 8th grade. More of them will be high school ready entering 9th grade. And if we can fix it at that point, then the rest will be easier. But again, if they're entering into high school, not ready for high school, they're just going to keep getting further and further behind because the demands of sports are going to increase, and they'll have more excuses not to do work.
Well, we certainly applaud what your organization is doing, the Educational Leadership Institute and the BOSS program, and the things that you have dedicated yourself to do here in Southern California and Long Beach in particular. And we wish you a lot of success, and thank you for coming on the program. We've discussed some very meaty issues in terms of the state of the African-American athlete, and we see your dream of them coming up in the world as far as their career is concerned as a very important issue. Thank you so much for being on our program.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
That was Attorney Everett Glenn, who is the President, CEO, and founder of Education Leadership Institute here in Southern California, and he's doing a wonderful job, and we thank him for being on Conversations with Erroll Parker. We'll see you next time for some more important and exciting guests on this program. Good night. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Reggie Berg. Just remember that the incident we were just talking about.
I know, but then Reggie, at least what he told me, then he got into a conversation with these guys, and you can't never win when
you're saying you should have left it alone.
Hey, give me the ticket, whatever you want me to do, let me go about my business, right? And then I will deal with you because I got your badge number and everything when I get out of here.
In a democracy, citizens need to be informed. Informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Growing up in the city of Long Beach as an African-American male can be quite an experience, even on the west side or North Long Beach. The confrontations with police, gang violence, and drugs are much of a part of growing up in any metropolitan city. And on our program today is Duke Givens, who's a product of Long Beach, and he grew up in Long Beach in the central area near King Park. He survived it, but a lot of other of his friends did not survive it. Duke, welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
We want to talk about growing up in Long Beach, and you have survived it. Not only have you survived it, you have been successful. You're a photographer. You published a lot of calendars about gang violence. You worked. You're a father. You're a husband. Tell us about growing up in Long Beach, and what do you want to do in this town, that some things that you're already doing that we want to talk about today?
I'll backtrack you to 1985. I played Pop Warner football at Long Beach Poly, which is one of the greatest high schools and institutions basically in the world. I was 14 years old, and life was very, very simplistic at that particular time, but also during that time, drugs hit the scene in Long Beach very, very tough.
What type of drugs?
Cocaine. That drug brought in a spirit and a situation that had our parents go in a direction they should not have went. A lot of people found themselves in prison and ultimately died. So what that wind up doing is allowing or putting the young men that I grew up with in a position to have to make choices. And at that time, gangs were really starting to become very prevalent on the scene, and a lot of these young men joined those gangs.
I looked at a football picture with you in it and some of your compadres, some of your teammates on that football. And it startled me to tears because I knew some of those guys, the number of those who died with gang violence, as a kind of gang violence, as well as drugs. Tell us about that experience growing up and some of your closest friends dying because of gang violence.
Yeah, so and I can go back to that time again. Imagine playing football in the street with these guys in your community. And then just 3 or 4 years later, they made conscious choice to be a part of these actually 2 rival gangs in our city. There are a lot of different gangs, but these 2 particular rival gangs found a lot of my friends joining them, and guys that you slept on the floor with, guys that you played with, turned on each other and killed themselves.
How did you escape that? Now, I know how you escaped it. I'd like you to tell people how you escaped it. And it was basically because you had to be accountable to your father.
Yeah. That is something that is very, very important. Me and my dad have a very strong relationship, but I got a chance to see his love and his care, his concern, and that father-son relationship was forged into a friendship where I understood the direction that he was laying out for me to go. And I adhered to it as well, because you had a few other of my friends who had dads, but they made conscious choice to make other decisions. So I listened to the information given.
So what are you trying to do now? You've gone a stint in the military, you've come out, you're a businessman, you worked for a living. What are you doing now to mitigate some of the problems that African-American boys whose fathers are absent from the home, trying to turn that around?
Personally, I, along with a few other of my good friends and business colleagues, we do mentorship. We go into the high schools, the junior highs, and even the elementary schools, and we make ourselves present in their lives. We do teaching in different capacities. So for example, with me, I touch on a lot of social things, and I also deal with fashion. So I have been doing, over this past year, the concept of the basic tie. Dress the way you want to be addressed in life. And it was interesting because one particular school really pulled at my heartstring, and that was Poly, for one, of course. I'm always get back to Long Beach Poly, but Jackie Robinson. And these young men, they were doing their best throughout their time to try to learn to tie a tie, but they realized as simple as it looks, it's kind of difficult. So I was using that as an analogy with life. It may look simple, but life is not. So you have to be able to learn to navigate and have people help you.
How does one prepare themselves when they find that their father's not in their lives? Your father was in your life, you know the difference. How can that void be dealt with when a boy does not have to be accountable? Now, his mother is there.
Right.
That's different. How, as you as a successful businessman and entrepreneur, can affect the lives of a boy who is not with his father now?
Well, what I share with a lot of these young men, like you, for example, you're a mentor to me. And when I speak to these young men, there's a lot of mentors I have in the city. Chucky Miller, Robin Perry's an attorney, Doug Halbert, he's an attorney. The list goes on and on. Wayne Chaney's a fireman. So I use all these men in my village, and this is what I teach these young men to do as well. Grab men that you know that you can look up to that's going to give you the truth. These young men know what's going on, and they understand the difference between right and wrong. So I just give them a layout plan of where do you see yourself in 2, 5, 10 years down the line, and link yourself with these type of individuals that can help you.
Emerald in the Rough is a concept that you have, is a project that's going on. Why don't you explain that to us and how that ties into what you're doing?
Emerald in the Rough is a documentary about the importance of fatherhood. And it's actually wrapping up my dad's journey in life to my son's life. And it's going to let men know that if we all, of all races, are teaching the same thing generationally to the son, then you don't have things like racisms and all the other schisms and isms that come along with it. Mm-hmm. It's a feature-length documentary that's letting it be known that we need to get fathers back into these young men's lives.
Now, being a father is one thing, and you could be a single dad. But also there's an issue of matrimony, being married to a woman, being committed to a woman, and first and foremost, in some people's opinion, being a husband first, then being a parent and a father. How would you prescribe to that?
Yes, I'm married. I've been married 10 years now, and through the good, the bad, the ugly, and the pretty of it all, I let my boys know that it's togetherness. I show them what it's like. I show them that what's the true definition of a provider. I'm the one responsible for paying that mortgage. I teach them about responsibility, about chores, cleaning a home, all those different things, and then we all link together as a family. Prayer, just all these things, it's just a real powerful thing when the children get a chance to see the parents working together as a unit.
Then why is it so hard when we see all the categories, social, health, political, economic categories that African Americans find themselves in? We find ourselves in the bottom of almost all those vital societal categories. How can we turn that around? In business, in politics, and in social phenomena?
I don't have a puzzled look. That's just, that's the million-dollar question. But what I think first and foremost is that city, county, state, and it just morphs on and on, people really gelling together. So when you say an African American community, I believe in a community as a whole, but from an African American perspective, I really feel that we should sit down in capacities where we dialogue even more. Like, for example, me and you having this show, but it just doesn't stop there. Me and you need to sit and you give me expertise of things that you went through in the 60s, 70s, and 80s so that I can propel my 2010, 2020, 2030, and we could pass it on to our children. So in finance and real estate, like you explained to me years ago about the importance of purchasing a home. I bought a home. A lot of people are afraid of that. Mm-hmm. Life insurance. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't have life insurance. Why is that? So in speaking in that capacity, we need to make sure that we have our foundation, and it's listening, so it's choice. It all boils to choice. So I think that will help if people understand listening to our mentors in our village.
Why was it, zooming in on another subject here,
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your time at Long Beach Poly. Why is Long Beach Poly so nationally known and so special to a lot of people? You lived it.
Yeah, I can make a beautiful story out of that. It's a very special place. Batman had Gotham City. So if you do our coordinates, next to the VIP, you'll run across a high school that has had some very special human beings come through. The movie Black Panther,
Yes.
It was Wakanda, Pali is our Wakanda. That place that we bleed green and gold. People think we're a cult to some degree, but it's a brother and sisterhood that truly will forever go on, and it's nostalgic in so many levels. It's a very creative place. It's a very strong place. It's a very intelligent place. Long Beach Poly is just an outstanding institution, and I'm glad to have been a part of it. I'm glad to have graduated from there.
Right, you've brought some pictures. Why don't you grab the
Yes.
picture and turn it toward the
Well,
camera?
actually, when you say pictures, it's actually
Yeah, a calendar.
my very first project that I created. This was the very first calendar that is the Stop the Violence calendar. And I'll open the pages and go through, and we talked about 1985, and here is that picture that I shared with you about the young men that I grew up with. A lot of them made life choice, but we actually won the championship that year as well. So it was...
that was Pop Warner, right?
Yeah, Pop Warner, 14 pressing. At that time it was 9th grade, so we were transitioning into 10th grade. But so many great stories from this time. And when you go through this calendar, I interviewed men and women and asked them, what can you do to not allow young people to make the life choices that you made? And a lot of them were speaking it, but they were still living it. And as a result of that, some of them lost their lives or went to prison for a very long time.
You did a gallery during years ago. And I don't mind saying this. I walked to your gallery and I started crying. I mean, I was director at King Park, and I knew these guys. I'm gonna just choked up everybody now. It's like these young guys, and they lost their lives senselessly. These guys were all on my football teams and my basketball teams. They're just young, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And then they grew so hard. And you're trying to not allow as many as you possibly can going down that road today.
So being a photographer for 25 years, I've gotten a chance to have a plethora of imagery. And I, over the past few years, put together a gallery called Power of Choice. And it's shooting a concept that doesn't have any text in it at all. You don't need the bios of the individuals or anything. But when you go through this gallery, you'll get a chance to see someone who made a right choice and someone who made a wrong choice, meaning went down a path that sent them to prison or died.
Yes.
And what's interesting to me in this particular gallery is one or the other. No one's better than another. It's just the choices that they have made. And for example, I had some people that chose the gang life that had family, but they chose that life. And then I had some who you have a doctor, a judge, a lawyer, an administrator, a teacher, just all these different people in civic governance and leadership who made these choices to serve the city. But then you've had the others in this gallery who chose not to. So this is something that I have been dreaming about doing for a long time, and now that I have it, it really is an emotional, creative experience.
Let's zoom maybe 5 years from now, and on this program you'll be talking to power. I know the police chief watches this program, the mayor watches this program.
Yeah.
What would you say to the people in power about what would you like to see in the city of Long Beach in the next 5 years?
I actually have established a lot of relationships, so I communicate with them now. But 5 years from now, I would like to see the infrastructure come back where we have police athletic leagues, we have community-based things like when we came up. So for example, they would take us to Long Beach State when we were in junior high school. So the thought process of the individuals at that time knew that they wanted to go to college. Just taking us there, we just knew that this is the direction that we were going to go.
Inspiration.
I would bring that back. So 5 years from now, when I look back and see somebody watch this film and said, you know what, Duke was right on point with us getting back to our young people and propelling them to military, trade, college, and we really follow up and make sure that that happens.
Duke Givens, it was a pleasure having a conversation with you on Conversations with Erroll Parker. Keep up the good work, and if there's anything I can do, of course, I'll always do it.
Thank you, sir.
That's Duke Givens, and he is a mentor to many, and he's a savior to some, and he's a businessman, he's a photographer, and he's a great guy. Thank you for being on the program, Duke. We'll be right back with Chucky Miller, who's another guy that I've mentored, and he'll be talking about some of the same type of things on Conversations with Erroll Parker. We'll be right back. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. From King Park to Rogers Middle School to Poly High School and UCLA, Chucky Miller has been exemplary in his success coming out of the central area of Long Beach and doing some very, very good things with young people. As we heard Duke Givens talk about what he does. The same could be true of Chucky Miller, who went to UCLA in a football scholarship, graduated from UCLA, and now he's a property owner in real estate. He's got a clothing line, and he's got a fitness gym right in the Signal Hill area of Long Beach. Welcome to our program, Chucky.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Glad to be here, man.
I've always admired you. It's coming up here in the city of Long Beach. You avoided a lot of things that a lot of young men your age avoided in terms of gang violence and drugs and all that kind of stuff. How did you, your uncle had a lot to do with that though. How did you avoid a lot of that, Chuck?
I'm gonna tell you, Earl, it was easy for me, to be honest. It's about being a leader. It's about having a mother that wouldn't accept it. It's about the surroundings that I put myself in, and it's about also the respect that my peers had for me, and that the older boys in the neighborhood, they looked out for me, you know. So it was easy for me. I mean, it wasn't a struggle, you know. And then, you know, my desire, you know, I'm really competitive in life. I believe that in order to be the best, you got to wake up every morning wanting to be the best. And Long Beach was very competitive growing up in sports. We all competed against each other. So I wanted to be better than everybody. And being better than everybody didn't involve doing the wrong things, you know. So it was easy for me.
But getting through UCLA, I mean, yeah, you had a football scholarship, you were an outstanding player at Long Beach Poly High School, and you went to UCLA to participate in the Rose Bowl. But getting and graduating from UCLA is not an easy thing. How did that happen?
You know, like I said, Long Beach, I think it breeds competition. And the competition between friends growing up in Long Beach, man, you didn't want to, you couldn't get bad grades. If we found out you got bad grades, we killed you. We talked bad about you. So you couldn't get bad grades. And I think it was a carryover from that. I mean, UCLA, you know, going there, yeah, it was a different landscape. You know, I had, you know, different types of people running my life who I'd never been used to it, but either I was going to get on board or I was going to get out. And I chose to get on board. So it had to work. You know, I had a dream, and I wanted my dream to come true. I wanted people to be proud of me. So
one of the things that you're into right now, beside the entertainment type of things you're in the real estate, you're big on child obesity. You have a foundation dealing with that. Why is that so important to you?
Well, the one thing that we're responsible for as adults, we're responsible for our kids. We're responsible for our kids, how they live, what they wear, and then what they eat. Childhood obesity is running rampant in America. And I think that people look at it as something that they can't control, when that's in fact not true. The parents control what their kids eat. The parents control what their kids do. And since it's kind of like a natural progression for me, something that I should do because I am in the fitness business.
Yes.
I'm an ex-athlete. So that's the cause that I chose to fight. I believe that with the proper education, with the parents, you know, I mean, I don't just go out and get the kids and tell them. What I do is I go out and get the parents and tell them, and they need it more than the kids. So, yeah, my nonprofit is called Say Yes to Life. It's been around for like the last 10 years. We do a project. We did a project last year, and I constantly try to do it something called Feed the City, to where I give out 100 turkeys plus each year. I do family fit fairs, or where we do education on what it is, how to eat, when to exercise, how much to exercise, where to exercise. So we try to educate people as much as possible.
Tell me, we'll get into your clothing line in a second, but tell me about your fitness gym out there on Wardlow Avenue. I see, when I pass by it all the time, you see the door open, I see you working out, I see you on Facebook. Tell us, how did you get in that, and what are you trying to do with that?
Well, I got into the fitness position because I had been training athletes after I stopped playing for the Colts. I used to own a nightclub in St. Louis, and when I came back to California, I needed something to do. And at that time, personal training had just started.
Yes.
And since I was training athletes, it was really, like I said, a natural progression for me to go from training athletes to training regular consumers, what I call it. I've been there for 19 years. It's kind of like, for me, giving back to the community as well, because I get to change people's lives. I get to teach people how important their health is to them. I tell people every day, are you going to put a deposit in your health account? And people don't understand that, but you get up every morning, you should go to the bank. And what I mean by the bank, that's the health bank, and put a deposit in your health account. So it's very important for me, Erroll. You know, like I said, I've been there for 19 years, man. I love helping people out. It's affordable training. All poly graduates always get love from me. So, you know, it's fun. And the funny thing now is that I go from training, I've trained a lot of the people I grew up with, kids now. You know, I put over like 50, 60 guys in the NFL, man, through my training there. I have one of my teammates there, Ashley Helton. She's a poly grad, a UCLA grad as well. So she helps, she whips people in shape. So we're doing good things there, I feel.
Now, but let's be real, Chuck. You got a single mom that has got maybe 2 or 3 kids, and she's worked all day, let's say, and she doesn't feel like cooking. You know, you go home and work all day and then to cook. And so it's easy to go to a fast food restaurant, buy some burgers and some fries and a Coke, and feed their kids that for dinner. And the price is so low that it's convenient and affordable for somebody to eat things that are not healthy.
That's true. Today's marketing, corporations are setting families up to fail. I mean, constantly.
Diabetes.
Yeah, high blood pressure, diabetes. They're setting the families up to fail by, you know, the dollar menu.
Yes.
Well, the way you get around that, what I call is what my mom used to do. She used to cook for the week.
There you go.
So, I mean, I could tell you, everybody has excuses, Erroll,
Yes.
but excuses don't lead to results. They lead to no answers. So if you really wanted to figure it out, how to help your family eat better, live better, function better, you can. So that's an excuse, but meal prepping is what we call it.
Yeah.
Prep your meals for the week. Start on Sundays, and you're gonna cook for the week.
That's right.
You know, so.
Well, let's switch reels a little bit there. Now you have a clothing line. Tell us more about that. Now you're an entrepreneur and all that. You're a real estate guy. You're in fitness. And now you're also in the clothing line. Now we can talk about the entertainment thing in a little while. But how did you get in that, and what type of clothing line are you talking about?
Like I said, Erroll, everything I do has to make sense. It's kind of like a domino effect. First, I get in the fitness business, right? Then I get into I want to do a nonprofit. So, and then now the next thing that I do is my clothing line. And my clothing line has been around for 2 years now. It's called Fit Life. It's very promising. My local base has showed that they love it. And also what we do is we donate a portion of the proceeds to fight childhood obesity. I just had an event where I donated money to, what's the hospital? St. Jude's Hospital. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm constantly giving back, man. It's fun to me, but my clothing line, I love it. It stands for itself. Anything I do, I want to promote better health. I want a healthier life, which is Fit Life.
Now let's look at the community. I know we've had private conversations about things that you would like to see, especially in the area that you grew up in the central area of Long Beach. What are some of the kinds of things in the future that you would like to see in that area of town?
Man, I grew up in the 6th district, Erroll, and
that's the 6th Council District.
Exactly, mm-hmm. And I see everything around the 6th district changing except it. You know, I'd like to see some monthly town hall meetings, all right, to talk about how we can make progress into seeing things differently. I think that, for one thing, if you wake up every morning and something looks the same, and that's something that looks the same you don't like, you're not going to respect it. You're not going to want to change. You're not going to want to be there. You're not going to want it clean. You're not going to want to clean it. So I think we need to beautify that part of our city. I think that, you know, the business owners need to take responsibilities. I think the homeowners need to take responsibilities, and I think the renters do. There's so much. I mean, I don't think we even have enough time, but you know, don't be surprised if you see me running for the 6th district when it comes up.
So it's all about leadership. It's all about having a vision and providing the leadership that people need. Now, how did you think that sports coincided with you being a leader?
Well, in sports, sports breeds a lot of strong personalities. Sports is about winning. It's not about losing. I don't care what nobody say. They can pat you on the back and say good job all the time, but when you get older, that good job turns into just you just lost. That's just how it is. So I think that, you know, each individual player, now you have some players that will stand out in front of everybody, but I think each individual players that ultimately make it to the highest level of whatever sport that they are competing in are leaders. You can't be successful in athletics and not be a leader. The honest truth is that, like, you get up every morning wanting to win. You get up every morning knowing that you're competing for a job every day. And then when I play for the Colts, every day in practice, I felt like I had to make the team. You know, and that's just how it is. So you have to be a leader. You have to be accountable for your actions. You have to take that step every day.
Now, when you went to UCLA, you played in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, 2 of them.
That's right, two Rose Bowls. You played under Terry Donahue. What type of relationship did you have with him?
Man, you talking about a leader of men right there. I learned a lot from that dude. I didn't see it when I was there, but he made a big impression on me. He took a young kid from the East Side who thought he knew everything and made him into a man. He showed me how to win. He told me how, if I lost, to get back up. You know, you get knocked down 8 times, get back up 9 times. He told me, one of his famous saying is this, Erroll: when it's going good, it's not going all that good. When it's going bad, it's not going all that bad. And that's kind of how I live my life. And what that means is this, for me at least: when it's going bad, run fast. When it's going good, run fast. You know, you always have to be running fast, especially as an entrepreneur. You always have to be running fast. And that's the impact that he had on me. Really, really good guy, family man, brought his family around us. He taught us, like I said, about the love of family. You know, the importance of brotherhood, the importance of being a team.
And so, a teammate.
And a teammate, yes.
Now, in closing here, and talking in the last part of the discussion, there's been some ups in Chucky Miller's life, and there's been some downs. Can you share with the guys that you listen to some of the one downtime you had that you had to pick yourself up, start all over again, and get back up on the top?
Man, right when I came back from St. Louis, it was a downtime. Had a little problem with the IRS a little bit, and you know, you just could never stop believing in yourself. Once you stop believing in yourself, I think the party's over with. And that was probably the lowest point in my life. But you know, I believe, like Coach Donahue said, never give in. You know, never give out, never give up. You know, that's how I live.
Chucky, it's been nice having a conversation with you with Conversations with Erroll Parker. As you know, I've told you many times, I'm so very proud of you. I'm glad to have been a part of your life and maybe it influenced you in some type of way. And we appreciate you coming on our show and explaining your ups and your downs and the things you hope for the future in the city of Long Beach. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was Chucky Miller, outstanding young man here in the city of Long Beach, as was Duke Givens in our program today. Look forward to these guys doing some great things, and they are doing some things, giving back to the city of Long Beach and the neighborhood that they were involved with. We'll see you next week on Conversations with Erroll Parker with some more important guests. Good night. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed. Informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Samantha Mellinger is the editor of the Long Beach Business Journal, a publication that has existed for well over 30 years, reporting on the business community, primarily in the greater Long Beach area. Today on our program, Ms. Mellinger and I will be discussing and analyzing the local and regional economic climate. Welcome to our program, Samantha.
Thank you
We're
for
so
having
happy
me.
to have you here, taking time out of your busy schedule as being an editor of this fine publication. Why is by all indications, Samantha, the economy is doing very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Well, we've had very slow and sustained growth for about 10 years now, since the end of the recession. And we're actually approaching the longest period of economic growth that this country has ever seen. The reason for that is that following the recession, the federal government kind of put a tight lid on lending restrictions. They poured some money into the economy by buying bonds, quantitative easing, they call it. They kept interest rates, they slashed interest rates and then kept them low. And individuals and businesses were reticent to make risky investments, and they were also kind of prevented from that due to some of those restrictions. And what you saw as a result is slow growth in gross domestic product and in consumer spending over the past 10 years. But recently, we've obviously seen a spurt.
Well, we're seeing a spurt because of the tax cut.
Correct.
That the Trump administration has championed, but it was really the Congress under Paul Ryan who initiated it and passed it.
Correct.
Should they get the kudos for this economy taking the spike up from this slow growth?
Sure. Well, I don't know if I have the authority to give anybody the kudos for economic growth, but certainly,
They played a
Congress
role.
passed it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly. But since they did, the first quarter was a little slow still, and you really saw the impact come around in the second quarter where GDP doubled compared to the first quarter, and that's because people had more money in their pockets and they were seeing the benefits of wage gains.
Well, it's not a slam dunk that when you do a tax cut, that the business community is going to reinvest through it with paying people more money, wages, as well as hiring people. New people. But in fact, we're seeing the beginnings of that in this tax cut, are we not?
We definitely are. After the tax cuts, you had some massive corporations. I couldn't even list them all because they were in the dozens, really, come out and say, we're hiring X many people, we're investing in these workforce development programs, we're going to increase these benefits. Boeing was one. Obviously, that has a local impact. And locally, I mean, the economy has been growing anyway, but I've spoken with businesses. We recently did a focus on Douglas Park, and most of the companies located there that I interviewed, and I probably interviewed around 20, said that they were growing and they were hiring.
What types of, and these are manufacturing, not heavy manufacturing businesses, but manufacturing businesses nonetheless, because we were saying nationally manufacturing is over
Right.
because it was been shipped across the seas. But what types of manufacturing companies are we seeing at Douglas Park?
Sure. It's interesting you make that observation. I've had conversations with folks at the city and their workforce development department about sort of the future of manufacturing and how it's changing. You're not seeing the same large-scale manufacturing like you did with McDonnell Douglas back in the day, but you are seeing some smaller scale manufacturing.
For
that's
instance?
still significant. Virgin Orbit over at Douglas Park, they're manufacturing satellite launchers. So if you go toward their facility, you'll see them literally building rockets. That's one. You have a printer toner supplier over there. You have Rubbercraft, who manufactures polymer products.
Who is instrumental in getting these manufacturing companies to come at Douglas Park?
Well, actually, the real estate community, I would say, because that was a huge undeveloped parcel of land,
Yes.
and there's very little industrial property available in the South Bay and near the ports, for example. So that was really the only opportunity when that got built out to move into a larger facility or to build something to scale to handle that. So a lot of companies moved that needed to grow from like Gardena and Carson to snatch up some of those industrial properties.
Also, we're seeing a lot of construction going on in the city of Long Beach. It's characterized this city more than I've ever seen. I've been in the city a long time. We're seeing a lot of construction that's going on, particularly in the downtown area.
Yes.
Why is that, and who's benefiting from that? What type of construction are we seeing?
Well, you're seeing a lot of investment on the part of real estate developers. When I speak with economists, they tell me Long Beach has been kind of overlooked as a place to invest for many years, kind of I hate it when people say this, but the stepchild to Los Angeles.
I've heard that many times.
Yes. But real estate developers are now realizing that it's a more affordable opportunity, it's a growing city, it's the only downtown on the waterfront between San Diego and San Francisco. There's growing businesses here, so you're seeing, and there's a great need for housing, so you're seeing as parcels become available, they're just getting snapped up, mostly by apartment developers.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned about housing. The median cost of housing in Southern California is like $600,000.
That's right.
And despite the fact that there's a lot of housing development going on, there's still a shortage in housing right now. What's going to be done about that?
Well, that's a complicated question. When you speak with economists, for example, or builders, or the real estate community, what's really holding back development, because we're actually underbuilding. We are seeing a surge in development because the economy is doing well, but it could be doing better. I think we're supposed to be building to meet demand something like 100,000 units per year, and we're only building 80 statewide, and that's because of environmental regulations, such as the California Environmental Quality Act, kind of need to be revisited. It causes developers to have to jump kind of through too many loopholes. There's too many opportunities for developments to be nixed. In some cases, obviously, there's good reason for that, but in some cases, these processes get dragged out so long that the developers no longer have any money left to really put into it.
And so in that case, that's when the executive should come in and say, okay, we got potential businesses coming into the city or in this county. Can we cut some of these regulations? And then, of course, on the other side, they say, well, these regulations are needed. So it gets bogged down. And in that case, what would the mayor of a city do in that case?
Mayor Garcia has been very pro-development, smart development in the downtown and along like the metro corridor. So he's sort of championed housing. It's not as much of an issue in Long Beach, I think, because everybody recognizes that we have a need for affordable housing, but you do see it in places. My brother lives in the Bay Area, and a lot of housing projects there get nixed because the neighborhoods don't want them. They don't want more people coming in there. We don't have that attitude in Long Beach, but it is a problem.
Well, you mentioned Oakland and San Francisco. San Francisco was dragging in terms of economic growth for a while, and then we see, at least the reports that I've been getting, is Oakland and San Francisco are on the upsurge, just like Long Beach. And those are port cities. Does it have anything to do with, and we'll talk about trade in a second, but does it have anything to do with those cities being port cities as well?
You know, I wouldn't be able to tell you that one.
Okay. Now, I'd like for us to turn to the tariffs. The tariff policies of the administration. The Trump administration, and some even not so many some business people say that we've been getting the short end of the deal in terms of trade deals. And that's why the Trump administration is saying we want a fair share. We've been losing, and we look at recently at NAFTA. But these tariffs that are are being tried to be administered by the Trump administration, what type of effect would that have on like our local Long Beach economy?
It depends upon the tariffs, but specifically we need to be looking at what's going on with China, which obviously is the source of kind of the back and forth with the tariffs, the trade war
wars.
discussion.
Yes.
About 80%, I think, of cargo coming through the San Pedro Bay ports, coming in and going out, is sourced from China or going to China. So if the tariffs keep escalating, right now I think it's 25% tariffs on 60 billion worth of goods, something like that, I believe. If they keep escalating, that will cause trade to be restricted because a tariff is essentially a tax or a fee, and you're artificially inflating the price of those goods to ship them overseas.
There's a reaction to that.
There's
if
a
I put a
reaction.
tariff on you, then you're going to put a tariff on me.
Right, and eventually that discourages the movement of goods because it's too expensive to ship them, and those costs will get passed on to the consumer. And then the argument in favor would be, well, that might stimulate some domestic production. However, when we're talking about the Long Beach economy, a major sector for us is trade and logistics and warehousing in terms of employment. And if trade were to slow down through the ports, those jobs would be affected.
What type of jobs?
We're talking about rail workers, longshoremen, dock workers, truck drivers, warehouse workers.
It's like a domino effect there.
Customs brokering, I mean, even law to a degree, and at the very end of it, retail. So yes, it could cause some problems.
And looking in the article that you recently said, the San Pedro Harbor would probably be the most affected, at least from a local standpoint. Why so?
Absolutely.
Because they have those types of businesses?
Because that's a major sector of employment. The San Pedro Bay ports are the largest port complex in the United States.
Really?
Yes, they handle 40% about of the share of maritime trade coming into this country, and most of it through these ports is coming from or going to China. So if tariffs continue to escalate with China, it's sort of an obvious conclusion to draw that if that trade is restricted, all of the ancillary industries that support those massive ports could be affected negatively.
So when we look at that situation and we look at what needs to be done, obviously it has the business community, at least that industry, nervous about what's going on. What then traditionally would be done to kind of try to circumvent that?
The tariffs?
Yeah, we're talking about this China, United States pull and tug in terms of threatening, the Trump administration threatening tariffs. At that point, we have two opposing viewpoints. How can that be resolved?
I don't know. I mean, we're kind of in uncharted territory, and obviously we're dealing with an administration whose policies are not as predictable as prior administrations, and it has kind of been par for the course that free trade is the accepted, mode of things for the past few presidencies. So this is kind of uncharted territory in recent times, so I'm not quite sure. Obviously, the administration is trying to intimidate China so that we can get some gains in trade, and it just depends on how long that process drags out, what the impacts will be.
Well, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about the performance of the mayor of this city in terms of the policies that he is at least championing, if not instituting, and who in a city like Long Beach, what entity in a city like Long Beach are significant players in terms of the economy being boosted. Now we got a national situation, but in a city like Long Beach, you have city council members, you got the mayor, you got some of the business organizations. We want to find out what roles they play in terms of the economy being boosted right after we take a short break.
Okay.
We're visiting with Samantha Mellinger, who is the editor of the Long Beach Business Journal, and we're going to talk about the mayor, this office of the mayor and the city council in terms of this economic growth that we're experiencing here in Long Beach. We'll be right back after these messages. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. We're visiting with Samantha Mellinger, who's the editor of the Long Beach Business Journal, and we were talking about tariffs, and we're talking about the economy, and we were talking about possible trade wars. But I'd like to turn our attention right now, Samantha, to the offices of mayor and in the local economy. And we see a lot of construction that's going on. We see a lot of good things going on. And then if I see some good things going on, I say, who's responsible for these good things? Now, the city of Long Beach, which is the local government, is totally responsible for things. How much credit does a mayor get, or either Mayor Garcia gets, Mayor
Garcia.
Garcia gets, in terms of the boost in the local economy?
Mm-hmm. I think it's only natural that people typically give credit to whoever is in power at the time that the economy is doing well. You can compare it to past presidents. President Obama came in when the economy crashed, but was that his fault? President Trump is overseeing a period of growth. Is that entirely because of President Trump? And you can kind of say a similar thing when it comes to mayoral leadership. Mayor Garcia has been pro-business in some ways. He has reestablished the economic development department of the city. That was one of the first things he did when he became mayor.
Now that's wise to appoint someone who in a position, like we're talking about the economy, someone who knows the economy, somebody that's respected and can give good advice. Mm-hmm. And that's what, apparently that's what you're saying that the mayor did.
Yes, he reestablished the economic development department, and John Keisler is in charge of it. He's somebody who's been with the city a long time and is kind of an ideas guy. And he's done a really good job in putting forward some programs and policies to help businesses, and particularly entrepreneurs start up. He's trying to take another look at business licensing to make that process less onerous. He helped lead an effort to create an online portal that takes businesses all the way through, like startup to opening, even in terms of not just stuff you're dealing with the city, but how to get funding. We have a small business ombudsman now. There's all kinds of things.
One of the big things that small businesses, or even large businesses, but mainly small businesses, one of the biggest griefs they have is that it's too much regulation. They have to jump over too many hoops, and it costs them money. Mm-hmm. What has Mr. Kaiser did to kind of alleviate that?
Well, I think business licensing, him taking a look at that, if something comes to fruition with that, I know it's kind of a process, that would really help businesses if that process were easier. He's made the department, just by virtue of having the department and having more people on staff, I think they're more accessible now. Mm-hmm. You also have, for instance, one of our council members, Janine Pierce. She has proposed cutting conditional use permit costs for entertainment. That's something that could really help business. So that's something that's coming up. We could see that would really be helpful in terms of cutting red tape.
What role does the city council play in terms of this economic growth? We talked about the mayor, we talked about the city government in terms of Mr. Kaiser and the economic development contingent, but what role does this city council play? When somebody is elected city council, people generally, the electorate really just say, well, he's a good, well, sometimes they do say that, he's a good business person. But looking at this council comprehensively, what role has this council played in the last couple of years in terms of this economic growth?
Mm-hmm. Well, the city council sets policy, they create ordinances which can guide, they can create business restrictions, or they can help them in some ways.
Who's been taking the lead in that on the city council?
Well, it depends which side we're talking about. So in terms of creating restrictions, you have the environmental side. Mm-hmm. You have proposals that have been put forth about banning styrofoam. That one passed, although a lot of the businesses are on board with that because they see the negative impact it has on our local harbor, but it is an additional cost. The council was also pushing an increase in minimum wage, which ended up being a non-issue because the state passed its own policy.
Okay.
But that process was kind of difficult for the business community as the council was going through it. There was a policy being proposed that's now going to the ballot because it didn't pass the council to regulate hotel work hours and to provide
It was kind of
workers
controversial
with
there, too.
panic buttons.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's reasons for that. But so those are some examples of, it's kind of a mixed bag,
Yeah.
actually, from the city council.
Now, we look at, when we talk about environmental restrictions, we look at the west side of Long Beach, which has the rail system going on the west side of Long Beach. And there's always been a big fight in terms of the trucking industry and the railroads. Is that a big conflict in terms of a city council person saying, whoa, because we got polluted air coming from the port? And then some council people who are maybe pro-business saying, well, let's ease up on the restrictions. Is that a clash?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. There is a project that's caused a lot of that kind of debate recently that's coming up for the Port of Long Beach. It's the expansion of Pure B's on-dock
That's
rail.
right. That's right.
Yes. The West Side businesses that are there, I went over and sat down with a bunch of them. They were very unhappy because many of them, it's going to either butt up right against their business. And we're talking about companies that are dealing with like Disneyland and Starbucks, and that's going to negatively impact them. Some that would actually be wiped out by the rail lines. If you look at the environmental impact report, there are concerns in terms of impacts to health, but the port argues that overall rail will reduce truck trips, which will overall reduce emissions and reduce health impacts. But I'm not necessarily the expert in that, but that's the debate that's happening. It did pass. The council member for that district, Lena Gonzalez, did, I know, meet with the businesses, and I know that she does have concerns, but it did pass. So it is moving forward, and we'll see how that process unwinds.
Well, I want to talk about a journalistic question here. You are editor of the Business Journal. What role does the Business Journal play in this economy here? What are you guys trying to do in terms of your business publication, and so that means you're pro-business. But what kind of role does a newspaper like yours play in a city like ours? Role that you're actually trying to play?
Well, I think it says on the cover of our paper, we want to be the voice of business. We want to know what businesses are going through, whether that's dealing with city government, dealing with the state government. We want to know what's helping them be successful. We want to know if they're growing, but we also want to know if they're facing some difficulties. And part of that is also engaging with the city government, county government, state government. We have some proposals coming up on the ballot that could really impact businesses. There's a parcel tax proposed for the county that's meant to create funds for stormwater abatement, which could really help our harbor on the one hand. On the other hand, it's going to add a tax for like all impenetrable concrete. So basically any industrial business is going to be affected pretty significantly by that tax. So those are some of the things that we kind of try to keep an eye on in advance of them happening so that the business community is aware and we get their feedback.
That's very, very, very important. How did you get in this business? You're the editor of Long Beach Business Journal. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into this.
My background is actually in creative writing. I have a BFA in fiction writing.
BFA, what's that?
A bachelor's in fine arts.
Okay.
And I have a master's in fine arts from Long Beach State. When I was at Chapman University, I took a theater abroad course, and my professor kind of took me under his wing, and he knew I was good at writing, and he said, why don't you write about something you love? So he got me in with a theater publication in LA, and I continued writing for them all the way through graduate school and decided to give the journalism thing a try. And I saw a position open at the Business Journal a little bit after I graduated, and I'd applied to a lot of places. The economy was still pretty rough in Long Beach at that time. And I figured, well, I don't know much about business, but I love Long Beach at the time. Now I know much more about business.
Obviously, yes.
And I applied, and they gave me a shot, and I sort of hit the ground running, actually as staff writer.
Give us a sneak preview of what might be coming up in the Business Journal that your readers might be interested in that you see on the horizon.
Okay, I can give you our next edition, for example. We've got our annual interview with Mayor Robert Garcia.
Okay.
Our focus on corporate presence, where we talk to a lot of the major corporations that have operations in town about how they're doing, or this time we're actually asking them what they want to see in the future workforce. So if they were to talk to high school students, what would they tell them to pursue?
That's good.
We're going to be talking about the parcel tax I mentioned.
Parcel tax, tell us about that.
It's the one that has to do with stormwater funding, and that's going to really hit some real estate and owners
what
of
part of town?
businesses. Everybody who owns any real estate will be affected by that
How so?
parcel tax. Well, I'm not an expert on the tax, but assuming that you have any kind of spot on your property where water could run off into the gutter, you're going to be hit with the tax,
I
and that's
see.
supposed to fund stormwater abatement. So if chemicals are running off your property, the county can fund ways to counteract that.
So you've been editor for how long now?
Since January, I became assistant editor last year and was promoted to editor this year.
I want to ask you a question about Mayor Garcia. Since you have been with the newspaper, and you guys sit down with him annually,
Yes.
what can you see from this mayor that has shown some maturity and growth that we should be cognizant of? At some point, you can see him in perspective in terms of what he's doing with this city. What difference have you seen in the last 2 or 3 years with him? Maybe in some growth area as the mayor.
Ooh, that's a tough question because he came in with a lot of experience already on the city council.
Yes.
And I think he's been pretty smart about the way that he's approached his job as mayor. He knows that it's the city council's job really to set the policy. I think he obviously guides that to a degree where he can, but he kind of stays out on the major quabbles, some of the major debates until the end. So I don't know quite how I would answer that question. He's always engaged with the community. I think maybe he's engaged more so with the business community over the years. But
And he's been a proponent of education as well. And we're talking
that
about
was his
business.
big thing from day one, yeah,
Yes.
because he's an educator.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we've enjoyed talking with you, Samantha, and I've known about your newspaper or Georgia County News as a publisher for many, many years, and most people feel like your newspaper is very fair. There's some very challenging things coming up in this city, and the voice of a business journal, a business newspaper has a vital role to play. And we thank you for coming on the television program, Conversations with Erroll Parker, to talk about this.
Thank you for having me.
We just visited with Samantha Mellinger, and she's the editor of Long Beach Business Journal, which is a very important, plays a very important role in not only in our economy, but informing the business community of what's coming on the horizon. We thank you for coming on the program, and we'll be back next week with an exciting guest on Conversations with Erroll Parker. Please join us. Good night. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. The current United States immigration policy has been one of the most divisive and complicated national policies in American history. Pro and con public debate and protest have divided this country in much the same manner as the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. Today on our program, we have two very passionate spokesmen on this hot-button issue. Dr. James Monceau Salceda, who is the director of the Multicultural Center at California State University, Long Beach, and Armando Vasquez Ramos, who is the coordinator of the California-Mexico Project. Welcome to our program, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Two old friends, and we're going to
Indeed.
cut up about this policy the United States has
Yes.
in terms of immigration. And I want to challenge you guys a couple of times in terms of this policy. Let's take a look. There are some myths, Armando and James, about immigration in the United States, that the current immigrant population is taking the jobs from the current low-income Americans. Is that a myth, James, or is that true?
Well, that's typical rhetoric of fear mongering. It's always been in the entire history. By the way, there's no time in American history that we've had a coherent immigration policy. So the idea that this is new, I would challenge that. I would say this is not new. Look at the 19th century. look at every immigrant group that's come here, whether from Europe or from Asia or from Mexico, they have been demonized in the same way. That's one of the oldest chestnuts used, and just all the changes is the cultural group you're using it against.
And this has been a worldwide view. Not just the United States. All of the countries, when they have had new immigrants,
Okay.
Armando, have demonized or attempted to demonize. Yet this population is needed. Any population that comes to a country economically is needed. Is that true?
Absolutely, and I think to add to what James has just stated, we have a history of anti-immigrant.
Yes.
You mean the
racism.
United States?
The United States. So without going into what's happening today worldwide, which is a very similar paradigm, what we're looking at here is another cycle of what has happened since the founding days of our nation. What is uniquely different in terms of how European groups were discriminated, were exploited? When we're talking about Italians or Irish or Polish or whatever European immigrant population, they differed in terms of color. And they blended into that whole concept of the melting pot. That applies to white Americans. It does not apply to people of color. Whether they're the ancestors of African Americans that were brought here by force as slaves, or in our case, Latinos, Mexicans in particular, that were the dwellers of this land, along with the American Indian, were not only stripped of their land, but also were systematically exterminated. We're talking about genocide.
Yes.
So I think that it begs the question, what happens for 100 years since emancipation and what culminates with a civil rights movement that you and I were a part of in the 50s and the 60s, and that we assume had eliminated this history of violence and racism and discrimination. What we're seeing today is an awakening of folks that have always had that racism, and generations that have followed, that have been submerged since the 60s and the 70s, but that attain a mouthpiece in the form of Trump.
I see you nodding with
Because
agreement.
what we're seeing is there's simply permission to say what you already believed but had suppressed. And I think there was a general naivete. We have a black president. As if that changed the root system of racism that has been institutionalized and systemic from all our history. And there was, so I find it very different. I like the word crisis. It's a Greek word that really means turning point. I was agreeing with you, Armando, earlier when we were talking that a crisis is a positive thing because it clarifies decisions that must be made. The challenge is to make that decision in a direction that is supportive of a new national identity.
Do you see that happening in the United States?
I see that potential in this crisis.
There's no evidence of that you've seen that lately at all?
Well, I think we're seeing when people see the destruction of families, to see something they've never seen before. It's like watching the civil rights on TV, and they're seeing children with attack dogs. Now they're seeing an immigration policy that is brutal, callous, that is creating trauma for children, that has no relationship to a policy. That's a decision that had nothing to do with policy. It has to do with a meanness of spirit. And that's clarifying. We need to see that. In other words, I'd rather a racist, for example, be bald-faced racist than a racist that smiles and stabs me in the back.
Another myth, gentlemen, that we see is that illegal immigrants that come into the country is draining the economy of health services because they have to go to, there's no preventative service, they have to go to the emergency ward. They're draining the economy of some things that the native citizens could be benefiting from. Is that a myth as well, Armando?
Yeah, it's a total myth, and it's part of the spin in a racist campaign that starts with Trump declaring that Mexico sends criminals, rapists, murderers. And what was the dog whistle for that base that he has targeted and continues to speak to, which is your extreme right-wing racist. There's no other way to look at it. Now, let me also make the following observation. We have now entered a period that is not only during Trump, it's also Obama. During Obama's administration, there was almost 3 million immigrants deported. 96% of those were Latinos. There's something wrong with that. And it was a systematic targeting of deportations by the Obama administration because he wanted to seem hardline. He wanted to bring Republicans to the table and negotiate immigration reform.
Was he successful in doing that?
Absolutely not.
No. But let me back up too, even in the phrasing of the question. Human beings are not illegal by birth. The fact that we create a term, illegal alien,
Yeah, that term.
pre-shapes your ability to see. If you said undocumented worker,
Is that a better term?
well, they're coming to work to have a better life. But the only time I refer to you as a criminal term, it erases the possibility of me seeing your humanity or even understanding it's a family seeking a better life, who are hardworking and honest. But if you have at the top someone saying rapists and criminals instead of hardworking and honest, well, you have it's shaped in our language of immigration, just the very phraseology.
Armando.
It's dehumanizing, but let me expand on that a little bit more. Fundamentally, what we're going through is another cycle in U.S. history with folks that have always hated immigrants. What we're looking at now, in the aftermath of the Obama administration, given this massive deportation that I mentioned, what we have also caused is the exile into Mexico and Latin and Central America of more than 800,000 U.S. citizen children that were born and forced into exile with the deportation of their parents. That's an issue today that is off the headlines, and there is no concern with a violation of human rights, of children's rights, and certainly
who should be-
citizenship, constitutional rights of a U.S. citizen.
Who should be calling the task of a policy that's so divisive and dehumanizing? What apparatus does this country have to call the task of accountability then?
We are at a standstill because we have total control of government. All 3 branches of government are controlled by the same party, the same right-wing mentality. So Congress is totally unresponsive. The Supreme Court is about to become overloaded with conservatives, more like zealots. The administration will not change in 2 more years, even if there's a change in the control of Congress in November. The bottom line here is that we're incapable of bringing to a court the case of these U.S. citizen children that are stuck in hell in Mexico.
You're painting he is painting a pretty bleak picture, James.
Well, this is back to crisis, though. What it's doing is clarifying what we are and what we're doing. Does the nation want this to be the nation? In other words, it takes the vagueness out. And what we're seeing, and I think, again, it's like we don't have healthy venues in the nation where, aside from politics, that's not the voice of our neighborhoods. That's not the voice of our neighbors. We've let sort of media conglomerates shape everything. And we're not hearing from people. You know, you lose the election by losing a popular vote, but you would never know that the popular vote didn't vote in this president.
So what are you saying? With all this multimedia outlets that we have in this country, you still are saying that immigrants don't have a voice, and those who are advocating for immigrants don't have a voice. Is that what we're saying?
And I think that the fact is that media plays to ratings. Media plays to whatever is the most profitable bottom line. Now, let me get back to the question about health services and how immigrants are perceived to abuse. Immigrants are not eligible for health services. And no immigrant has ever drawn from the system more than they put in.
Yes.
Otherwise, immigrants would not be attracted by a magnet of employers that want to pay cheap labor. Now, are they taking away jobs from Americans?
That is what is being said.
Absolutely not, because Americans are unwilling to do the jobs that these young people, predominantly, are willing to do. And I would say that the worst fear that this is responding to, number one, taking back America was a racist reaction to a black man being elected our president. But the other, the anti-immigrant mood comes from 2 decades ago when philosophers like Mr. Huntington, Harvard philosopher who produced this idea that Latinos were the worst element to fear, worse than Middle Easterns, because of our potential growth into a separate society. I don't blame them. The fact is that Latinos have grown into a 60 million population in this country. So we are threatening that way, but we're going back to the difference is that we are not white. And otherwise, this immigrant cycle is no different than any previous cycle. It's productive, it creates wealth, and they are the future of our retirement, Erroll. They're going to sustain our Social Security.
Before you get started, we got to take a break.
Okay.
But I want you to pick up on your point. But I also, in the second segment, guys, I want to talk. Well, then what would be a good national policy on immigration? Let's talk about that. Let's put that on the table. But hold your point. I know you're going to respond to something, Armando. We're going to be right back with these two gentlemen talking about the national immigration policy of this country after these messages. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Welcome back. We're visiting with two proponents of the change, at least in American perception of immigrants, James Sauceda and Armando Vasquez Ramos. We're talking about this immigration policy to the United States of America, and I want to get into that in terms of what some policy changes that can be made in that respect. But James, you were going to make a point about the future.
Yes,
about the vision
imminent generational voice that is just emerging right now. When you had mentioned in your opener about a galvanized America around an issue like Vietnam, this is the issue that will galvanize a new generation. They do not think the way Congress thinks. They are not coming from an old racist Jim Crow mindset. They grew up in a globalized society. They crisscross culture, ethnicity, and religion with ease. They find themselves allies to any number of groups. They will be not only voting, they will become the leaders we're voting for. And I think one of the things people act as if this old guard is going to continue. It will not.
Well, now, the old guard might be dying off because of age, but do we see young Americans who are very conservative about immigration policy still existing?
Of course. That doesn't, what changes has to do with a synergy of thought, with how do you engage that conservative view, as you had mentioned earlier, in a civil way. Divisiveness comes with incivility. I don't care how well we believe what we believe, there should be a way for us to understand how and why we believe it.
That's right.
And from there, options open. But we're in a transition where anger and violence and knee-jerk response goes viral before any fact-checking, any evidence, any context.
So you condemn what you don't know. Which
That's
is one
what
of the
happens,
worst,
right?
Yes.
What you're programmed to condemn,
Yes.
what you're programmed to believe. And quite frankly, I'm pleased with the transformation that is happening. Not that I'm happy because we're suffering through it,
Yes.
but I'm happy that this will also change the nation. This will also pressure younger generations to take the leadership. Let me make this point.
Okay.
I am very disappointed. I am totally beyond belief that almost 2 years since this nightmare began, there's no uprising. There's really no response from young people, from churches, from unions, from educators like ourselves. There is no leadership coming from young people in the universities as we were part of in the 60s and the 70s.
Why is that, you think?
I think that is part of the numbing of this now a process through media and the distraction of electronic devices.
Well, here we have.
But one of the things is in the university setting, which I think can be a preview of positive movement for the nation, our own campus at Cal State Long Beach. So you have a Latina president, a Muslim vice president. You know, you have an ease of leadership, and they're doing social justice on a campus level. That's going to start magnifying beyond a campus. Others are going to say, we like the way that campus gets along. We like the way they work together. Why can't we do that? Or they're becoming more thoughtful about how do they project their own dissent. Is it counterproductive because it's just angry and it's just, and I think we're in a where it's tumultuous,
Okay.
but it's a turning point. That's how we turn, is through tumult. It's not through ease.
Armando, you are the director of ethnic studies in the Long Beach, or ethnic studies programs in the Long Beach Unified School District. What are you trying to do? And I wanted to ask you the same question with the Multicultural Center at Cal State Long Beach. What are you trying to do with ethnic studies with the schools?
Let me clarify that, because I'm not employed by the school district. I'm still a professor part-time, retired from the university, but I created this program 3 years ago to enable us to teach ethnic studies college credit courses from Cal State Long Beach to high school students.
How's that going?
In 6 different high schools in the district. Fantastic. We started with only 1 class at El Rancho Unified, and Long Beach Unified came in big with a commitment of 12 classes every semester, and I just brought in the Norwalk La Mirada School District with 3 additional classes. We're teaching at 10 different high schools, 17 classes every Saturday from 9 to 12, and it's a phenomenal opportunity to teach about what we learned, what we created 50 years ago in the form of ethnic studies, history and culture about American Indians, Asian Americans, African Americans, and Chicano Latinos. So it's a wonderful opportunity to discover how these young people are hungry and are so capable of analyzing the hunger that they have for knowledge about themselves and to interact with the others, to understand better their differences, but appreciate what makes them a unique part of the mosaic of our U.S. society.
See, and that's exactly part of this movement. That helps to re-nourish and empower a new generation who can understand the social justice victories of their own past, who can see and find an identity that is dynamic and forward-moving. So I'm the founding director of the Multicultural Center, which has been open for 26 years. But I'm the first director of the Office of Multicultural Affairs, which is just its 4th year, which is a good example of now what we did at the Multicultural Center as a root system has branched so that it's university-wide. We now support all the 6 student cultural resource centers that had been on campus for 30 years, but never were part of strategic planning, never had staff or support. Now we're starting our 4th year where their vision, we co-create with them and support it. And we're seeing cultural competency training and workshops that we provide to faculty and staff. We're seeing what we've never seen on the campus before. And it's taking that model in a way, but make it campus-wide. And that creates an empowered student who cannot be, as Brother Minister Malcolm X said, won't be bamboozled by these sound bites, and just will be able to use critical thinking as empowerment of authentic voice.
Okay. Now, on the short run, gentlemen, we mentioned what's going to happen in the long run, perhaps. What types of policy changes need to be made in the short term in this national immigration policy? Would you speak to that, and then we'll let James?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the first change has to be in the House of Representatives and possibly in the Senate, in the U.S. Senate, during this year's elections. If there is no change in the control of the legislative power by the Republicans that are totally locked in step with the Trump administration, then there will be no change of any immigration policies whatsoever. I believe that once there's at least one of the 2 houses in Democratic hands, that you can begin a process of proposing true legislation that can be negotiated, even if the Senate remains a Republican-controlled House. Bottom line, I don't think that anything can happen with the type of racism and the mentality of folks from the White House, as well as the leadership of the U.S. Senate and U.S. House of Representatives. And I think that has to be the first step before we're
So we're talking about an electoral process where...
Absolutely, and that has to start in November of this year.
James?
But one of the things, we need to start with DACA and face it, and because even in Republican circles, that group are not criminals. They are the embodiment of working for an American dream in a way that has produced professionals and have been here for generations. That can be the opening of, that voice needs to be reheard. Who are all of these people and what are they doing? They're contributing to society. They are helping to energize our campuses as professionals. And it's a group that defies the easy rhetoric that paints a single picture. So that would be something that needs to be truly addressed first, I think, in a way, because it's almost a bridge point. It can help people see a different humanity within an immigrant population.
Okay, so you 2 gentlemen deal with populations of young people across ethnic boundaries. And what we're seeing on television now, Armando, is people shouting at one another who deeply disagree over points of view, over policy, over occurrences. And you have influence and or authority over, and I use the word authority loosely, but over young people who may disagree with you or with themselves. How do we teach young people to respect another person's viewpoint and to understand it? First you, Armando, and then...
I think it all comes down to education. That's why teaching about ethnic studies in the high schools is so fundamentally appropriate today, given the hate coming out of the White House, given the polarization that we are facing throughout the country. Now, how do we get people to understand and appreciate and accept each other's different point of view and racism? That's a key question. We need to understand how racism comes from the home, how the racism is passed down through generations, And the only way to break it down is in the classroom, is through, frankly, even gatherings like we organized back in the 60s against the Vietnam War, teachings, bringing speakers that are on one hand controversial, but not provocateurs, bringing about a dialogue in after a presentation of
So should we
substance.
shut down a very conservative viewpoint speaker to come into a university that has been invited by an organization in university?
No,
We
no.
shut them down.
Well,
Say, no, you can't come.
No, you can't. That is counterproductive on every level. The best protest to a controversial speaker on a campus would be an empty auditorium. And to have, at the same time that they're speaking, teach-ins available to those who want to
So
actually
you're
learn
saying
about the project.
if a very conservative speaker comes to been invited by the university,
Yes.
don't show up. Don't
Well,
come.
I'm saying that students have the empowered free speech to exercise themselves, and that can be a different response. That speaker wants mobs of people yelling at them. That is the game they play. That's the strategy. They will not return to an empty auditorium. Thank you very much.
And that's exactly what we did a few years ago at Cal State Long Beach, when there was a Nazi legislator from the San Diego area that was creating havoc, going to different campuses, and he would be supported by these thugs that would go to campuses looking for headlines through violence.
Yes.
At Cal State Long Beach, we arranged for a debate with Enrique Morones, who's the head of the Border Angels. And what Enrique did, and in a coordinated effort, he started the debate by exposing the racist background of this individual. I wouldn't even mention his name. And at that point, he led a walkout of the entire auditorium. And we left these knuckleheads on the stage with not more than 10 or 15 people. And so I think that it depends on how you handle it. I personally believe that the administration has a responsibility to screen and to ban anyone who is already intending to create violence and conflict, not with an intellectual point of view, because that's how you also eliminate the possibility for this to go out of
We're
hand.
out of time, fellas. You get the last quick comment.
And it's a positive one. The answer, the civil rights movement had a moral compass of nonviolence and civility. We've allowed the civil rights movement to not be passed to another generation. They don't know that Dr. King says our goal with an opponent is not to humiliate or undermine them. It's to understand their view and even make friends of them. That is the high moral compass of the civil rights movement. Ethnic studies will help them relearn what these movements were about.
That's right.
And their behavior had the highest of ideals, and I think that can energize a new generation.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for old friends coming and talking about this. I would urge you to tell your students to watch this television program so they can decipher themselves some of the truisms that came out of this. James Salceda, thank you so much for coming. Armando Vasquez Ramos, thank you so much for coming on Conversations with Erroll Parker. We hope that you have benefited from these conversations. We want to know what you think. We'll be right back next week with an exciting guest on this program. See you later. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed. Informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed. Informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Reverend Dr. Leon Wood and Paula Wood are co-founders and administrators for the Success and Challenges organization. It's a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to the development of youth in this city. And they've done an outstanding job for over a decade, helping young people with their career development, with their socialization, the discipline, providing a safe place for young people to grow and thrive and develop. Welcome to our program, Reverend Dr. Leon Wood and Paula Wood. You're doing a great job in the city of Long Beach. We want to talk about the mission of the organization as you founded and also what you want to do for the future. But let's start with you, Paula, in terms of you're the executive director of the program.
Yes.
Tell us about what you're trying to do with Success and Challenges Incorporated.
We're really trying to work with families, particularly families with youth, and we're really trying to help them be able to live their lives so that they can manage every aspect of it, and whether that has to do with the education, employment issues, housing, just to be able to function. We have many of our families who are what we would probably call dysfunctional, in the fact that maybe there's not two parents in the home, or parents are busy working, children are without care part of the day, basically maybe raising themselves sometime without child care. And so we're really trying to help those families be able to manage so that that can be an effective unit. And so we work with parents. We have advocacy programs, leadership program opportunities for our parents, as well as teenagers and youth. We found early on that many of our children were having problems with homework simply because they couldn't read, or they couldn't read as well or as effective as they should be able to read.
So you're dealing with literacy as well?
Dealing with literacy, yes. And one of the programs that we started back in 2005 is called the Freedom School, Long Beach Freedom School.
We want to talk about that in a little while.
Okay.
But you are also a co-founder of the organization. Mm-hmm. You're a member of the clergy, but you have been a political activist for many, many years, having got your doctorate degree from Claremont College and University of Laverne. The Success and Challenges program, as Paula has described, what is your role there? Now, she's the executive director. What are you trying to do in your role with Success and Challenges?
Well, what I've done is I try to be to bring as much positive political activity. And I try to develop relationships that will come in and provide the support that we need for the program. And I also know that for a program to be successful, it has to have positive social capital throughout the community. So I try to network with various persons to make sure that we have the kind of support base that we need. And then I use some time to develop some new creative ideas for new programs and to spread it out to a little wider audience than what we have done in the past. So that's my major role.
Now, with the new administration in Washington, D.C. and the funding in terms of these type of programs drying up to some degree, how are you managed to keep this program afloat the Freedom School we're going to talk about in a little while, but it takes funds in order for a nonprofit to
Well, we've really
stay
been
afloat.
blessed that since we've been in Long Beach, we've been able to get the word out to many of our local foundations and many individual donors. We have a very successful event that we have launched about 7 or 8 years ago called our Gala. And that's one of the things that we use to raise money for one of our major programs. We solicit, individuals for donations. We write grants. As Reverend Wood said, we're always looking for opportunities to connect with other organizations and maybe work together.
Collaboration.
Collaboration, yes, and being able to collaborate on some grants. And so we've had some successes in that area. And I think through a lot of prayer and God's blessings with us, we've been able to continue over these years. It's been quite a journey.
Quite a challenge,
Quite a
as
challenge,
the name of
yes.
the organization depicts. Single parenthood, much different than when you were raised in Bakersfield and you in Detroit,
Yes.
Michigan.
Yes.
How is your organization dealing with the absence of fathers in the home, and what kind of effect is that having, Dr. Wood, on the inner city home?
Well, what I've seen more of is that more and more young, especially males, are being raised in homes without a father. And you can observe that in the behavior and then their performance.
How does that manifest itself in the behavior?
Well, fathers would give you at least sometimes how to be the macho image of how you're supposed to conduct yourselves, how you're supposed to address issues, how you're supposed to solve problems. It also gave you an understanding of what your responsibility is going to be when you grow up and become a man, become a male. Right now, it's very difficult to find those kinds of experiences for young people, especially young males. Also, fathers were able to, with daughters, to have, so the daughter could expect a certain kind of behavior from a male, so the respect and how to respect her dignity and so forth. These things are now very difficult in a home and in an environment. There's a lot of pressure on the mother who's raising the children, both male and female. The father's not there, and we have to figure out how to rebuild and bring back together that kind of a unit. Success and Challenges has been very, I guess, sensitive to those issues, and we've tried to develop programs and develop relationships that try to do some replacement of what is lost, and that's what we've been after.
One of the things that we've been very excited about is we have a parent engagement program, and this program is in its second year. It was funded by the California Endowment, and it's specifically designed to work with African American parents to really help them develop their leadership skills. And we noticed that they were absent at PTA meetings, at city hall groups, anywhere there's a place where parents might want to be able to talk on behalf of their children. They were absent. And so in a discussion with some funders about this, and they said, well, you deal with a lot of African American parents, you deal with a lot of families. If anybody could maybe get some help out and get some of our folk more involved in some of the community issues, then you guys could make an effort at it. And so Success and Challenge just launched a Parent Institute where there's actually been a series of workshops that were designed for parents. We worked in conjunction with the Children's Defense Society, Children's
Defense Fund.
Children's Defense Fund,
That's
sorry, in these workshops. And it was a series of workshops. We did it all last year, and we're starting it again this following fall. But it's really an opportunity for parents to go through and harm in on some of the things that they already know. Like, a lot of parents don't realize the stories that they have within them, but maybe they haven't had that time to spend with their children. It's about communication. And a lot of times children actually really don't know that much about their family history and what's going on within the family. And so we're trying to encourage parents, within the time frame that you have, use that wisely. Really begin to develop a communication with your children. Let them begin to know who they are and begin to understand the issues that are going on for them at school. And then with that, also helping them to learn how to develop their own skills within themselves, helping them to become a little bit more self-assured about their ability to be able to learn how to speak up, to be able to go in a school and present themselves to a principal or the superintendent or whoever it is that they need to talk to.
A person in a position of authority.
Exactly, to be able to advocate on their parents and do it without anger, do it without frustration. Be able to deal directly with the issues and be able to leave with answers. And so we're seeing many of our parents are excited because they feel that they've been given their power back. They feel that they're a real advocate for their child, and now they can tell other parents, this is what you need to do. If there's a problem at your school that your child is having, this is how you need to address it. And they're actually budding up and going with one another to be a support. And so this is the kind of thing that we're trying to develop with our parents and really letting them know that they do have some power.
Tell us about the Freedom School. Now, that's Marion Wright Edelman.
Marion Wright Edelman, the Children's Defense Fund. We have been actually operating what we call a CDF, Children's Defense Fund Freedom School, since 2007.
Here in the city of Long Beach.
Here in the city of Long Beach. We work in conjunction with Long Beach Unified School District. We've been very fortunate that they have provided us with a school. I think maybe 2 or 3 years we were at churches, but predominantly at a school. The program operates for 6 years in the summer, and it's a reading enrichment program. The idea not necessarily to teach children how to read, but really get them to develop an appreciation for reading. And the program is exciting. It's different from the regular school model.
It certainly
and
is.
I think because it is different, parents tell us that their children don't have any problem in getting up and getting to school.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I have been at the beginning of the program in Harambe, and I kid you not, that's one of the most chilling and inspirational morning type of activities that I've ever been involved in. Tell us about Harambe and about the group there.
Harambe is such an uplifting experience. It's a 30-minute, it's a very short pace time frame, but they start out, we sing the Hallelujah chorus, and then we go into having someone from the community come in who is a guest reader. It could be someone like yourself. We try to get people from various backgrounds and careers, politicians, teachers, school administrators, you name it. We get, I have some of our parents that come in and read. And you're reading to a cross-section of all age groups, so you have the children from kindergarten through high school in Harambe. They're listening to the reader. The reader's telling a story. They have a short time to ask questions about why the reader selected that book. And then maybe the reader will share a little bit about their career. And then they there's a little cheer that goes with that. We do cheers for everything, always a positive reinforcement. And then next we have the cheers and chants. And the cheers and chants of Freedom School are really the kind of the power behind the program. They're always uplifting. They're always based on some type of educational component, whether it's around reading, education, it's proving oneself. The whole thing about Freedom School is that children are taught early on that they have a voice, and that with the right abilities, learning the right way, they're able to use that voice to get what they need and what they want in society. And so we do moments of silence, and then we do recognition. We always make sure that we're recognizing our children for whatever positive we might have seen. It might be simply, thank you for helping pick up the paper yesterday on the playground. But we're always doing some type of recognition. And we have little things that we do, like raise hands, one mic. And so it's a very effective program. It's exciting, it's fast moving. We go on field trips, and the reading curriculum is amazing.
Now, they go back to Indianapolis.
No, the staff go back to Tennessee.
Tennessee.
They go to Clinton, Tennessee,
For training.
actually, for training. And they are trained at the University of Tennessee, and then also Alex Haley's farm, which is a farm that Children's Defense Fund purchased for training purposes. And beautiful, they're there for a whole week, and they have an opportunity to learn the curriculum that has been developed for Freedom School, and then bring that back. And so the curriculum that we use is a curriculum-based program that is designed to really enhance a child's interest in reading.
And over the years, it's become multi-ethnic.
Yes.
Because it was not originally designed for that.
It started out kind of as a result of the civil rights movement, as a part of the civil rights movement.
Okay, so when we return, we're going to talk exclusively to Reverend Wood about the things that are happening in the city of Long Beach. But before we get off that, I'd like to congratulate both of you for the success and challenges. I've been closely involved with the program myself. We're doing all kinds of things at the summer basketball and academic camp that we've done, and the tutorial program in North Long Beach, and the math collaborative. There's so many things that you're doing. Paul, I'd like you for just in 10 seconds, talk to the people out there and tell them how they can get involved with supporting Success and Challenges and the Freedom School within 30 seconds.
Okay, well, the Success and Challenges program, you can get in charge. We have a website, www.successandchallenges.com. We also, you can call us, look us up on the webpage. But Success and Challenges locally is 5239 Atlantic. We have an office there. We're active in the community, so.
That's how you can get in touch.
That's how you get in touch with us.
Thank you very much, Paula. And when we return, we're going to talk exclusively to Reverend Dr. Leon Wood about some of the things that are happening in the city of Long Beach from a spiritual standpoint, and how he's using his influence as a clergy person in 2 or 3 different churches that he's been involved in the last few years. How are we going to do that? We'll be right back after these messages. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Welcome back to Conversations with Erroll Parker. And today on our program we've had Paula Wood, who was part of Success and Challenges, and now I'm going to have an exclusive conversation with Reverend Dr. Leon Wood, who has done many things in civil rights and in Christian education and in spirituality in this city. He's been a part of 2 or 3 or 4 churches, and he's gotten a feel, Reverend Wood, of what this city is or where we are spiritual. But can you summarize, with all the issues that this city faces in homelessness and unemployment and immigration and police brutality and some of the negative things, but some of the high spiritual things, where are we spiritually in this city?
Well, Long Beach is it's really a different kind of a place. It's a multi-ethnic place. It has a variety of ethnic groups, both economically and educationally, living together. We're almost a family. We just haven't learned how to live like a family yet.
How can we bring this together from a spiritual standpoint?
Well, the churches right now, that we have our services on Sunday, and we have different meetings periodically, but the meetings are very courteous and very kind of bland. We haven't really come together and talked about the central issues, because that might at some point in time cause a little bit of a emotional disturbance. But if we get it out on the table, we can deal with
What
it.
is the most, some of the most spiritual issues that this city is facing?
One of the issues that we have, I think one of the key issues, is racism. And I'm not talking about, we normally always, when we think of racism, we usually say the white community being racist, but we don't really deal with all of the communities have racial issues and have some racism in their behavior and the way they conduct themselves. We haven't really brought the issue of racism out on the table to try to get it done once
So it's
and
not
for all.
Exclusively an African American and white issue?
No, it is not.
How so?
Because as an example, I'll give you one kind of an example. Take the port and the warehouses out there. The men that do a lot of the lifting, about 65 or 70% of them are African American. Because a lot of the men have prison records, or they're come out of and they're working out there. They line up in the morning to be chosen. Well, the supervisors are Latino. The guys that are trying to organize a union group are also Latino. The owners are Anglo. Well, they're trying to organize something. These men are trying to do their job. They're trying to do their job, and they're trying to do their job, but they can't come together because the issue of trust isn't there. So therefore, the owners have a way of letting them stay divided, and that way it gives them an opportunity not to really get into the issue of fair labor practices. We find that kind of behavior all over, because if you keep people divided, you cannot unite for a constructive effort to do good for all people.
It sounds to me, Reverend Wood, that you're talking about that there's someone or some group that needs to step forward and facilitate and mediate the racial issue in this city, whether it's national or local.
The pastors and the religious leaders of our city, of a variety of faiths, need to come together, because since on Sunday or Saturday or whatever day they really have the most people. So that it starts with them. If they come together and really have a discussion about just what we can do to make this a better world for all of us, I think we can get some headway.
Well, we have a South Coast Interfaith congregation or organization.
I'm on the board, yes.
What are they doing in order to mitigate some of this misunderstanding?
The meetings that I've gone to, I don't mean, but they've been very courteous, but not direct on the issue. There's been some activities. I must admit they've done a lot of social good, and that's fine. But if you want to change the life of a nation and of a community so that all people can live together the way our scripture says, and in harmony and in brotherly love, then we haven't really dealt with the issues to do that.
Well, it starts with clergy.
Yes, it does.
And the clergy seem to not been able to get it together because we still have this issue. So as a clergy person yourself, on a one-on-one basis with all types of different faiths, what must you do? What must you get out of your comfort zone to do in order to bring the clergy together so they can fan out in these different neighborhoods?
Well, humbleness is one thing, truth is the other, and love is the other. And I must control my ego. I am not always right, and I must always be prepared to make change when necessary, because when another person presents their issue to me, I must be willing to accept and understand so that we can work together and come to a mutual agreeable conclusion.
Now, when you interact with your fellow clergy about this type of issue, is there resistance on their part? Or is there sympathy? Is there sensitivity in that part?
One-on-one, you usually get, not anyone has disagreed with me, but in a group, we haven't really dealt with it because it appears that we want to not offend, or that we don't want to deal with the issue because it might cause a real disturbance and we can't do something that's quick. What I'm talking about is not going to be quick. It's going to be, you have to be determined, but if we do it in an effective way, it will be lasting.
Let's turn then to one of the deep issues. There's two deep issues that's going on in this country nationally as well as in the city of Long Beach. Let's start, first of all, talk about the homeless issue.
Okay.
When you drive around the city, and when you drive even in Los Angeles, you see thousands of homeless people around that camp around churches. And it doesn't seem that the church or the clergy community is really embracing and trying to get to the bottom of this really serious issue. What needs to be done?
Well, number one, the homelessness to me is the symptom of the problem. It is the manifestation of the deep problem. The deep problem is racism, unemployment, greed by persons in power who restrict resources and gear resources so that their advantage while other people suffer. And the other part is that the lack of sensitivity to the pain and suffering that it takes to be a homeless person. And so we haven't dealt with it that way. I've also had some issues, and I'm going to make some people angry, but the African American church has not been aggressive or active in an issue where the large number of the homeless are African American people, and the African American church has been the least group to make a concerted effort to address the issue.
Now, that's pretty a provocative statement. We look at the African American community as being really at the bottom of every category you're talking about in terms of,
Yes.
and you're saying that more sensitivity is needed by the African American church.
Right. I believe that, and I believe that the leadership, if we follow Dr. King's advice, if we followed the advice of Ella Baker, of others, we would understand. Even Marion Wright Edelman, when she was in SNCC, they went to the low, the ones that were suffering. We have a tendency now to say that's someone else's problem.
What about immigration? I mean, that is a national issue. What should the church of all faiths do in terms of the immigration policy that is really broken in this country?
Well, the immigration issue is people coming into our nation looking for a better life. That's how the nation started. People coming to this place looking for a better life. I think that it's heartless to not be an open, accepting nation to people, because I happen to grow up in the central area of this country. When this country, when we needed people to work the fields and so forth, we would go to those countries and bring people in. All of a sudden now, we're pushing them away, and I think it's heartless.
Well, you just can't not. I mean, the position of the president of the administration in Washington, and a lot of other people, you just cannot open your borders and let anyone in and let anyone flood in. We should build a wall. We should restrict immigration. Is that a reaction? I mean, immigrants have to work someplace. They come to the United States for a better life. Should we just open the borders and let anyone?
It's to me a sign of racism that takes me back to what you ever read. I used to tell people, read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. This nation, when they came here from from Europe to settle in this nation, the people came out and brought them gifts to welcome them. I think we should welcome all people to this land. I think this entire globe should be occupied by people working together on one accord.
Well, then, if you had it your way, there would be no restriction in people coming into the town. What about criminals? What about people who are coming from gangs who are creating crime?
That's the other issue. We help create gangs and criminals through poverty and lack of opportunity, through broken spirits. That's what helps create that kind of situation. I would say that those of us in America claims to follow the scripture and the Bible of Jesus Christ. At no time in any part of the scripture did I ever see Jesus restrict or welcome or even endorse the restriction of borders.
While that may be true, what about the issue of greed as far as its immigration is concerned, and as far as homelessness is concerned? I mean, we're a land of plenty, yet we see people sleeping on the streets.
We drive by people all the time after having a big lunch, and they're starving, and we have no feeling at this point in time. We have to recover our humanity so that we can begin to feel the urgency to do unto others as we would want others to do unto us.
And what about the Statue of Liberty? It says, give me your tired, give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. Have we forgotten those values? Should we take down the Statue of Liberty?
We should send it back to where it came, because we no longer believe in it. But I remember that the Statue of Liberty, when it came, they took off the chains that it used to have and put it in the basement, because even at the time of the Statue of Liberty, we still had slavery.
That's true. But when you look at the Constitution of the United States, it's a great document, and struggles had to ensue for women to have the right to vote, for African Americans to have the right to vote, for people who didn't have property had the right to vote. So it is an elastic Constitution. Are we still, and we're facing some very critical issues in terms of the Constitution. Which way are we going to go on that?
Well, I don't know, because the men that wrote the Constitution did not intend to include African American people or anyone. It was a document, in my view, the way they conducted themselves, a document that was a clear document to advance their own personal gain. What we have right now is, if we're not very careful, we have a dictatorship showing up, and we have a very cruel dictatorship, and we're using our local police force and ICE as the Gestapo, and if we're not careful, we're going to suffer greatly from it.
Very chilling analysis, Reverend Wood, about what's going on not only in our city, but also in the country. Thank you so much for coming in and exchanging and having a conversation with me about this.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to get it off my chest for a while. I've been carrying it a long time.
Thank you so much, and much success with you and Paula Wood with Success and Challenges.
Thank you so much, sir.
It's a program that's really needed in this country. Thank you so much. We have been visiting with Reverend Dr. Leon Wood and his wife Paula Wood, talking about success and challenges and the spiritual development and the spiritual issues facing the city of Long Beach. Very interesting conversation. Join us next week for some more exciting guests with conversations with Erroll Parker. Good night. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed. Informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker.